every single piece of immigration or citizenship legislation was designed, at least in part, to reduce the number of people with black or brown skin who were permitted to live and work in the UK. Former UK Prime Minister Theresa May recently expressed regret for the events leading up to the Windrush scandal that saw the wrongful deportation of dozens of British citizens to former colonies, including Jamaica. In her non-apology apology, May, who in her upcoming book, ironically called Abuse of Power, is quoted in the UK Guardian as saying she was profoundly sorry, but blamed the Windrush debacle on the policies created by successive governments. Without mentioning the wrongful deportations, May said previous governments had failed to provide Windrush arrivals with paperwork to show their right to be in the UK, ignoring the fact that their landing cards were destroyed by the Home Office in 2010, the same year she took charge of that department. And in case you need a refresher, the Empire Windrush was a ship that sailed into Britain in 1948, carrying about 1,000 passengers, 800 of whom were from the Caribbean, including Jamaica, Trinidad, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Barbados. At that time, the British Nationality Act gave colonial subjects the right to live and work in Britain, and they answered the government's call for workers to help rebuild the economy after World War II. They became nurses, teachers, drivers, cleaners, any job they could find to fill critical labor shortages. Their status was cemented with the 1971 Immigration Act, which gave Commonwealth citizens living in the UK indefinite leave to remain or the permanent right to live and work in the UK. Well, that's what everyone thought, including the Windrush arrivals, until it emerged in 2018 that the UK Home Office had not issued any paperwork to confirm the permanent right to remain, and had in fact destroyed whatever documents it had that could prove it. As such, the Windrush arrivals became caught up in a system spearheaded by Theresa May to clamp down on illegal immigrants. According to a BBC report, those affected were unable to prove that they were in the country legally and were prevented from accessing healthcare, work, and housing. A review of historical cases also found that at least 83 people who had arrived before 1973 had been wrongly deported. The UK Guardian put that number as high as 164 people who had been mistakenly detained or removed from the UK. When the stories hit the media in 2018, the government was forced to apologize, but that apology was too late for Carl Nwazota, born in London to Jamaican and Nigerian parents and whose British passport was confiscated when he tried to renew it in 2000. His life would slowly unravel over the next 2 decades, the lack of documentation putting him out of work, out of benefits, and eventually out of his home. Carl's story is hardly unique. Hubert Howard, 62, died in November 2019, 2 weeks after he finally received British citizenship and 59 years after he had arrived from Jamaica. He had spent his last few years fighting to prove that he was not an illegal immigrant, as the Home Office error that cost him his job had claimed. And Paulette Wilson, who died in 2020 at 64. It was her media interviews that propelled the Windrush scandal into the limelight. Wilson, a former cook at the House of Commons, was told that she was in the UK illegally almost 50 years after her arrival at age 10. She was arrested twice, prevented from working, and even spent a week at an immigration detention center before a last-minute intervention by her MP prevented deportation to Jamaica. When Paulette's story came to light, other Windrush arrivals started to come forward to tell their stories, and a subsequent inquiry made recommendations for the government to compensate those affected and take steps to prevent a recurrence. But the UK government has been making it extremely difficult to collect. Not only do the victims of this cruel scheme have to complete a 44-page application form, There is also no legal support to help them navigate the bureaucratic process to make a claim. The UK Guardian says only 1 in 4 of the 6,348 applications submitted had received payments up to June 2023. And Human Rights Watch found only 12.8% of the estimated 11,500 eligible claimants had been compensated up to January this year. In an April 2023 report, Human Rights Watch said that the UK government's compensation scheme was, quote, unfit for its purpose and requires urgent reform to protect the rights of claimants, unquote. It said the scheme should be independent, provide legal aid to claimants to assist with the complex application process, reduce the unduly high burden of proof for applicants, and provide meaningful avenues of appeal to address arbitrary decision-making. However, there is little hope that things will change under the current Secretary of the Home Office, Suella Braverman, who has scrapped 3 key recommendations from the Windrush report. 1, to beef up the powers of the immigration watchdog. 2, to set up a new national migrants advocate. And 3, to run reconciliation events with Windrush families. And earlier this year, a unit that was supposed to transform the operations of the Home Office to prevent a repeat of the Windrush scandal was quietly disbanded, according to a report in the UK Guardian. In so doing, Braverman, herself the daughter of immigrants, is simply continuing decades of racist immigration policy that aims to reduce the non-white population in the UK. A 52-page Home Office report leaked to the press has confirmed this to be the overarching goal of UK immigration policy. Speaking on the report, the UK Guardian said it concludes that the origins of the deep-rooted racism of the Windrush scandal lie in the fact that during the period 1950 to 1981, every single piece of immigration or citizenship legislation was designed, at least in part, to reduce the number of people with black or brown skin who were permitted to live and work in the UK. How ironic is it that the people who came to our shores, enslaved our ancestors, plundered our resources, and created trade structures that make us economically dependent on them to this day, are trying their hardest to prevent us from traveling to their shores? Anyway, local charities and advocacy groups are working with members of the Windrush generation, and hopefully the compensation will come through for them soon. But I suspect that the UK government has deliberately made the process cumbersome and is drawing it out and sadly waiting for them to die.